Welcome to the Real Mom Hub, where we celebrate the beautiful, profound transformation into motherhood. It's a journey that shatters and rebuilds us in incredible ways. We share the voices of everyday moms honing and discovering their natural instincts and superpowers. We talk to experts to try and make sense of our minds and bodies.
We air out the hard parts of parenting people don't like to talk about.
Because let's be honest, motherhood is as hard as it is joyful.
So why not embrace it? Lean into the growth, the struggle, the magic. This is your opportunity for complete and utter personal transformation.
Come with us. We're so glad you're here.
Hey everyone. We are joined by Natalie Bowler today. She is so interesting. I loved all her stories. She seems to be someone who has a spark of curiosity and really follows it. It was so fun to hear from her. She spent a decade as a trauma therapist prior to becoming a mom, and she's really generous in sharing with us how her work and her identity and so many things shifted when she became a mom. She's also kind and thoughtful in sharing some really hard things with us as well that definitely informed her perspective today. So if you are sensitive to the topic of miscarriage, just know that we do talk about it a little bit. She speaks about it really beautifully, but we do dive into that in this episode. So just be warned, be ready. We also talk about the work that she's doing today to support moms who are on the path of examining their own motherhood and how that influences the way they're showing up for themselves and for their kids. We talk about the curiosities that took her and her family around the globe in the last 3 years, sourcing out ancestral wisdom from different communities and learning from some of the wisest and most long-lived cultures. So we had a blast talking with Natalie. I'm sure you'll enjoy the listen. So tune in, and if you're like us and feel like buying a plane ticket at the end of this one, more power to you. Go for it. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited to chat with you.
Yeah, of course.
There's so many things to talk to you about.
There really
so many things I'm curious about. Could you tell our listeners a little bit about what you do? You can fill them in professionally because there are so many needs that you address professionally, but you're also a mom. So tell us a little bit about what your life looks like.
Well, I have been a therapist for about 10 years, and I specialized in working primarily with adult women with trauma and attachment issues. And then I feel like I had children, and I used to see really complex cases. And after I had kids, I just couldn't really handle the level of acuity anymore. And I also wanted to get maybe more on the prevention side of things. And so I felt like, catching moms either while they're pregnant or early postpartum can prevent a lot of the attachment issues that I was seeing that were causing people a lot of challenges. So that is something. And I had a group practice in Nashville, and I just closed that in January. So I am still practicing as a therapist, but I only see like 10 clients a week now. And then I also am very passionate about pregnancy, and if women want to have a natural birth, that it doesn't have to be, excruciatingly painful, because I feel like that's often what we're told. And so I have a course that I just released on that, but I also work with holistic sleep. So if people need support around sleep, that's like a very challenging time. Yeah. And so I do that. And then I'm also a mother hunger trained facilitator. And so I don't know if y'all know what mother hunger is. It's basically like when a woman doesn't have adequate nurture, protection, and guidance in childhood. And so then as adults, they can struggle. I think men have mother hunger too, but the author writes about women because she's worked with women primarily.
Sure. I have lots of pins dropped in all of the things that you just outlined. Lots of questions for you where we dig into your work. But first, I want to hear about your matrescence. Sounds like you had this almost, decade-long career as a therapist. And it sounds
Yeah.
like things changed for you when you became a mom. So let's start with what surprised you or really shook you to your core.
I mean, I think I actually, as I was getting ready to have my first child, I was having a lot of anxiety just about what it was going to look like. And I had a pretty rough birth with my son. And I would say I left that experience with some birth trauma, and so did he. But I think that probably contributed to this, but I felt very disconnected from my instincts and intuition. And I think was a little bit in this period of what should I be doing and am I doing it right? That sort of thing. And I went back to work in the office actually as a therapist when he was probably 4 months postpartum. And I felt like I was lucky to have that long of a leave. But I think when I had my daughter, I was much more connected to myself. And historically, I had probably been a little bit of like a workaholic. And so it was interesting having her because when it was time to go back to work, which was at about 4 months too, she refused a bottle. And so I was just like, what am I going to do? And again, I'm very fortunate in a lot of ways where I sort of was at this crossroad and decided like, I think I'm just going to work from home. And so I was able to not try to get really creative and like force a bottle. Like we tried some things, but it was just like, this is not really working. And maybe in our case right now, and we have the ability to do this, the best thing for her would be for me to stay with her. And so I would still do sessions, but I was able to breastfeed between them or like hold her and just be with her quite a bit. And so I feel like she was just born this like very wise little baby that was just not one of those high needs babies, but was just kind of like, this is who I am. This is what I need.
And I need the booby.
Yes, yeah. And I think I was more connected to like my mothering instincts too.
It's so interesting hearing you say that you were disconnected from yourself with your son, because when I look at all of the courses you offer, the therapy styles or focuses that you're working on with your clients, they're so intuitive. I mean, you're so curious about ancestral wisdom, intuitive mothering. So to hear that you had this personal experience of fully lacking that, I'm wondering, what did that look like for you? Not being able to access that. And B, when you realized there was a deficit for yourself.
I probably realized that I had a miscarriage between my two kids. And I think after that miscarriage is when I really realized it because I noticed with the birth of my son, like looking back now, I notice that there were certain things where I was like, I don't want to do that intervention, or like, that's not what I want, that this doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't fit. But I was, probably outsourcing my power to the provider and just thinking like, oh, you know best. And it ended up not being the best thing. And so I feel like that there were like inklings of that. It's funny, I'm a therapist, but I think I very much had postpartum anxiety after having my son because I was also Googling things or just, again, looking to people outside of myself, which not all of that is wrong, but in a very anxious way of like, somebody tell me what I need to be doing. What should I be doing? And so that's kind of what that looked like. But then when I had a miscarriage, it was a miscarriage. I was like 8.5 weeks along. And when I went into the doctor, I went into the same doctor that I had the traumatic birth with. And that's like a really good sign that I was out of touch with my intuition because it was definitely a situation where I should not have been going back to the same provider. But I sort of like figured out through that experience. I think that was kind of my entry into more of the holistic world. And I really had this thing where I really wanted to hold my baby. It was just something that I like felt very deep in my body. And so I just waited, and I waited for a really long time. And I ended up just like having the baby at home and getting to hold her. And that was really like healing for me personally. And I feel like a lot of times people don't give you that as the option. At least I was not given that as an option of something that I could do. And it was really, it was very, very sad, but it was also this very empowering experience. It was very sad, but I sort of learned in that experience to think about things more as like, that is somebody else's experience. I can have my own experience that could very well be different, because I think that kind of thing can stir up a lot of fear in people.
I love you said outsourcing my power at the beginning of that story, and that just stuck with me. I have this internal power that I'm not tapping into. I'm outsourcing. I mean, that is so powerful.
That's such a hard thing. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, of course. I feel like it's something that like we don't talk about enough, but I know it was so nice for me because I talked to a bunch of women that I actually didn't know at all who had had miscarriages during that experience. Because with a missed miscarriage, you're just waiting for it to happen if you don't get a DNC or take the pill right away. And so it was so beautiful to have women that were willing to share with me what their experience had been.
So it's crazy to hear you. So if your oldest is not even 4 and you had such a dramatic experience with him, and then you have this profound grieving period where you find your power with your miscarriage, and now you've dived so deep into ancestral wisdom that you've traveled with your family to find it. That's a jam-packed 3 years. I mean, that is so much.
That's probably like a little bit of like my personality in a nutshell.
Can you quick give like a little synopsis of that journey? I think Emily and I are both so curious about the ancestral wisdom.
My dad is Vietnamese. I'm half Vietnamese, and my grandmother's Vietnamese. And so I feel like I grew up with some ancestral wisdom, primarily probably more around food and taking care of your body and that sort of thing. And so I think I was curious about it already, but there's also a lot of war trauma in their background too. So some of that also I think has had a trickle down effect. And I've really tried to focus not just on the trauma pieces, but also just like the beauty of the ancestral wisdom that I've received from her. But I feel like I was kind of feeling honestly like a little overwhelmed and disheartened by the way that we do things in America around parenting. I mean, for one, just like our lack of maternity leave is one thing, but then I don't want to speak for everybody, but I feel like a lot of people have that experience with their first child of like feeling kind of anxious and like not being able to really reach within themselves. And I do think it actually sometimes is because of a lack of ancestral wisdom in our culture, and other cultures I think have a little bit more of that built in. And so I had this thought actually about the blue zones, and I was like, I bet they treat their babies really well there, and that babies are and children are just like really valued. And so the first place we went was Costa Rica, and we went to the blue zone part of Costa Rica. We actually were able to sit down with this couple that I think they were in their 70s, and they, no joke, looked like they were like 45. And they were only speaking to us in Spanish. We had somebody translating for us, but they told us all of these things about how they do things. And I was like spanked as a kid. Like, I think that's like very much a norm for some families and that sort of thing. And here were these like 70-year-old like grandparents telling us like, we never hit children in our culture. We talk to them, and they were talking about how I think on Saturdays or Sundays they would have these family meetings where the kids could bring their complaints to the adults in the family. And I was just like, this is so fascinating.
It's like holding court. I love
yes,
that idea.
Yes. Yeah. And like, so when we were meeting with this couple, we were actually doing like pottery making. And I just, because I'm into parenting, was asking them all of these questions and they were answering. I don't think that was like the point, or they knew that was why I wanted to talk to them. So I'm like making pottery. And it was also just so nice because it wasn't like something that was designed for kids, but they were just like set up this little table for our son to play with clay. And they had this instrument that my daughter, at the time, it was her first birthday actually. And the woman just had her up on this stool and she was like barely sitting, like toddling on the edge of the stool. And they're like the most calm humans I've ever sat with. And they're just like, and I'm like inside like, oh my gosh, they're gonna break the pottery with these like sticks and stuff. But it was just very cool how they just like jumped in, and it makes sense why other cultures have more of that village that I think that we are often looking for, because these people are just like helping us, taking my kids over with their dirty clay hands, and they don't like ask. It's just like they just pitch in, which was very cool. There was like this structure, I don't know what it's called, but that we were sitting under. It was all open, but it had a roof over it. And the guy was like, when we built our farm here, I think he said like 100 people showed up to help him, that were like a part of the Tratega people. And he was like, yeah, like we just help each other. That's like just what we do. But I was like, wow, 100 people. I don't think I would know 100 people.
Oh, like not only that, but like 100 people who would be like, oh, totally.
Right.
I'm there.
Yes.
I've got time. I'll make time. I'll show up. Let's do it.
Early this week, we were on a walk, and someone in our neighborhood is flipping a house. And he looks like he's about our age. He's been pouring his own concrete and creating like a front porch totally by himself. And my husband on our walk said, this is so weird. Like, we should all be showing up to help him. Like, the whole neighborhood should be with him pouring this concrete. And that's just not how we function at all.
Yes, definitely.
So I'm really fascinated by this constraint of yours of the blue zones.
Okay, blue zones being super healthy places.
Yes. So like, it's like they have the largest number of centenarians, I think is what they're called, but people who live to 100 or older.
I just like now I want to travel all those places. I was kind of Googling it on the side.
I know, me
Japan, Italy, Sardinia specifically, which I think
they're like such beautiful places. We went to Okinawa too.
Very
and that
cool.
was like also same thing. They were just so welcoming and so kind to our children. And you're like walking past somebody on the street and everybody acknowledges your kids. And I'm talking about like, it could be like a teenage boy is acknowledging your child, or, you know, this 90-year-old woman is acknowledging your child. And it's not, I don't know how to really describe it. It's more than just like, hi, baby. It's like this whole drawn out interaction that people have with you. And, you know, we're just tourists basically there.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's just such a vibrant culture in all these blue zones that you visited. Yes. And like that makes so much sense that they would see a child who's like the epitome of vibrancy, right? And just be drawn to that.
Yes.
Yes. I will say, so the only place we've traveled internationally with our child, he was 1, we were in Tuscany, Italy, and it was the same thing. And they're not on the list. This is not Sardinia, Italy, where it's a blue zone. It's not a blue zone.
But it's not the USA.
But it's not the USA. Their birth rate is lower than ours.
Yeah.
And they just responded to my husband and me and our child in such a beautiful way. And I'm talking about like adolescent boys in restaurants.
Yes.
Like, how do you know what the baby needs? Yes. It was just this celebration of the magic of this tiny person, which was, I'm like, wow. I mean, here we treat it often as a nuisance. When you see a family, it's an inconvenience in many ways, is the feeling that I get in certain places.
That's definitely the feeling that I have gotten to. Like, it's always very shocking to me when a little tiny like 1-year-old is like toddling towards you and somebody like scowls at the baby, it's just very interesting to me.
Like, how bizarre.
How is that possible?
Yes.
This is one of the cutest things objectively I've ever seen in my life. What is wrong with you? If it was a puppy, you might be excited. Why not the 1-year-old kid?
Yes.
So then how did you cope with that? I mean, you come home, like you're living here. How did you decide maybe to embrace your life here? Like, I think I would have thought, okay, I'm moving.
Yeah, 5 months away.
But instead you're helping moms and you're on a mission to, I think, make that more of a reality here. What did that look like?
Well, there were a bunch of sicknesses that culminated in 3 of us getting pneumonia.
Oh.
Planning is not my strength. I think if we had planned better, it would have been fine. But we were kind of always like, where are we going next? Okay, let's book that flight that is happening in like 2 weeks or something. And so it was like a very chaotic experience. We learned a lot along the way. So we traveled a little bit longer after that. And we came back here at the end of March, I think. Yes.
Oh, wow. You've not been back long at all.
No.
Wow. So my husband and I definitely were like, 2 weeks, we can book up, like very chaotic people prior to having kids. And having just the one, I'm like, no. So we need to change some things around here. This is not going to go well for us. We cannot. I think my first year postpartum, I was like, what do you mean? Oh, no, we're just going to have our same life, but like with a baby. It's going to be fine. And, he's almost 2 now. And I'm like, okay, no, there's some adjustment required on our end.
Yeah.
But there will be time again.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what an amazing 5 months.
Yes. It was such an amazing experience. And, it's funny because now that we're here, my husband's like, I'm really feeling like an itch to travel. I'm like, yes, me too.
For a couple months.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
So back to the ancestral wisdom, how do you separate like legitimate generational healing? Maybe you would categorize ancestral wisdom differently, but for me, it's what I think of is this wisdom that comes from many, many generations. We don't know how far back it goes, but it's passed from one generation to another, and it's consistent, and we keep it around because it's good, because it works. Maybe science doesn't tell us exactly why it works, but there's respect and dignity and actual results attached to these wisdoms or these teachings. So I think ancestral wisdom and kind of looking backwards is so trendy right now. You can find all of these TikTok reels and people are making memes, and I'm not trying to invalidate all of it, but it is a buzzword. So how do you separate what you're learning from these cultures that you're actually visiting from this kind of trendy ideal of, oh, this is just curious. Why do we, you know what I mean?
Hi, Emily here. I'm interrupting briefly with a quick ask for you. It's the only ask we're ever going to make of you, and it's this. If you're enjoying the show, if these conversations are adding value to your life, please make sure you're following us on whatever platform you usually listen on. This really helps us grow the show and make sure that we are capturing quality experts for our interviews. So please support the project if you're enjoying. If you're feeling like you have extra energy, please check us out on social and make sure you're following along there at The Real Mom Hub on all platforms. And we have a weekly newsletter. You can sign up for that on our website at therealmomhub.com. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so grateful for y'all.
I mean, I think what I was doing when I was traveling is really looking at like really all the generations and just how they interacted. So like they treat, in the 2 countries, the 2 blue zones that we visited, they treat the babies and the elders like very well. You just see 90-plus-year-old men and women out to get like couples out together in their garden, and they're like bending over, they're getting up and down. And so just seeing the generational health. In Costa Rica, there was a man that I talked to that was probably, I don't know, maybe like in his 30s, early 30s. And he was just talking about how, I think he said like Costa Rican moms are, I don't know if he used the word extra, but like something like that. Like that they're just like very like involved in their children's lives. And that sometimes, and he was like, this isn't seen as a bad thing. There's just like a lot of familial support. And so that's something that I want to provide for my kids when they have kids, because I live far from family, but I think even just the perspective of my parents on the postpartum period. When I was postpartum with my son, this again goes back to my disconnection from my instincts, but my mom came to visit. I think it was like right after I got out of the hospital. So I'm out of the hospital that day, and she's like, let's go to Target. And I'm like, okay, that sounds great. And I had literally broken my tailbone in labor. I didn't know that that's why I was in so much pain, but I was like, okay, let's go to Target. And it's the middle of July. I'm sweating. I'm in Target, so the air is on and stuff, but I feel all of a sudden like I'm going to pass out. And I like look down. I have my baby in a carrier. I look down and his like face is bright red. And I'm just like, we have to go right now. But it's just like that kind of thing. And in Vietnamese culture, there's something similar to, I don't know if y'all are familiar with that book, The First 40 Days. But it has like a similar sort of period of time in Vietnamese culture where you're like very much taken care of by your mother or by your grandmother. You're given like nutrient dense meals, like you're not up and getting around. And my mom like meant nothing by taking me to Target, but I think that's like what I think of as ancestral wisdom and what I want to give to my kids one day is like to be in touch, to actually be in touch with my intuition and instincts and be able to like help my kids do that if they decide to have kids.
Sure. Because it does take someone saying, at least for me, like, no, you're not allowed to get up. Because you want to be doing those things, especially like here, you know, where it's a go, go, go culture. It's really hard not to. So you need someone firm that you trust, like your mom, to lay down that law, I think, here, especially where it's countercultural to take time.
And that's like, you know, my mom's perspective of like, let's just go to Target. Like, I know that's how she handled her postpartum periods, and she had very little support. So it's like there's generational, I wouldn't even call that like generational trauma, but maybe like generational like disconnect of like what women need and that sort of thing. But she, I think like after she has 4 kids, so like after having my brother, her youngest one, like I know that she was taking care of 3 kids and a baby by herself. So it's like that's just what you do. And so, you know, in supporting me, she just thought like, oh, this is a fun thing. Let's go do this.
That's a good segue. I'm really curious about generational patterns and the work you do both personally and with your clients to break generational patterns that are not serving you or your kids.
I think like in working with my clients, I was seeing the effects of, I mean, and I have worked with like severely traumatized people and people who have a lot of attachment wounding. And so like I have seen like probably like the worst of the worst that there is. And that is not necessarily my experience, but it like highlighted things that I wanted to make sure I didn't pass on to my kids. So I personally wanted to try to parent more from a responsive place, or a place that is in the best service of secure attachment, rather than it being like, I have to push you away so that you'll be independent, or I need to punish you. So trying to like avoid punishing to get wanted behavior or get rid of unwanted behavior, and instead try and get cooperation through connection. And I mean, I think like I learned so much through parenting my first child, because again, I feel like I have constantly been trying to be creative to figure out what he needs. And so I think that's part of the responsiveness piece too, is not doing some manualized technique or program of like, let me try to employ this thing with him that somebody has told me to do. I've tried that. I think it often doesn't work. He's like, just needs a lot. And I very much am still figuring that out. Like anything I say, like with clients or on here, it's like, I do not have it all figured out. So I'm definitely still learning. I would just like to have a really solid relationship with my kids when they're adults too, because I feel like it has sometimes been a struggle for me with like my family members at times, because I think another generational pattern that is really important to me is like the repair piece or apologizing. So like if my kids when they're adults come to me and they're like, hey mom, this thing that you did really hurt me when I was
Really
a
messed
kid.
me up.
Yes. Like I hope to be able to be like, okay, I want to hear more about that and try and repair that and apologize with something like that. Like it's not actually good for our kids if we like never made any mistakes, because they're going to make mistakes. So I think that repair piece is just so important.
Hey, Cal, do you
Hey.
remember when I was first pregnant? One of the first questions I came to you in a panic over?
What do I wear?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was, what the heck do I put on my body? And do you remember the first recommendation you had for me?
I'm sure it was Kindred Bravely, because I tell every single new mom that they have to look into Kindred Bravely.
Yeah, no, that was how I remembered it too. Yeah, I
Okay.
think specifically the leggings were
Yeah,
the
fave
starting.
products.
Absolutely.
Leggings, bras. I mean, everything in between. You know what I've been wearing recently, which is funny? The really nice bamboo no slip like hospital socks.
Shut the front door.
I was out of socks, put them on. They were so nice. I haven't taken them off for 3 days.
I've never tried those. They're incredible. All of the things I've had from them, I've had for like 3 years. No wear and tear even.
No, it's
Somehow
amazing.
they don't pill. They're airy. I mean, yeah, phenomenal product. And this company is founded by women. It's led by women, moms specifically. So they get us. We love them.
So how do listeners support this mom-owned business?
They can use the link in our show notes. Start there and make sure that you enter our code, the Real Mom Hub 15 at checkout for 15% off your purchase.
And you can buy all these staples that honestly you'll keep in your drawers long after maternity, postpartum season is done for you.
Yeah, I never put mine away. My body shrank back almost back to normal.
And so did the clothes.
The leggings still fit me.
Incredible.
How? We don't know.
Incredible.
We don't know, but we love them. Thank you, Kindred Bravely.
That was one of my questions, especially around the mother hunger topic. Just from the little bit of reading, I'm reading through this thinking, oh boy, like, am I providing that attachment to my children? Like, it actually started to make me anxious reading it.
What are you talking about? Are you talking about her website?
No, I was on the author of the book.
Oh, Kelly
McDaniel.
I was just reading just like a letter on the page that makes a lot of sense, but I was like, oh boy, it did make me anxious. So what are your tips and tools for that? Like, as mothers are really digging into this.
And maybe why don't we even start with mother hunger? What is it?
So mother hunger is, she describes it as a very deep attachment wound that is from the mother when a child doesn't get sufficient nurture, protection, and or guidance. If they don't get enough of all three of those things, which is like a really kind of serious situation, she calls it third degree mother hunger, sort of like comparing it to a third degree burn, and just like the ache around that is it's really a significant heartache that I think people live with. And I actually am doing a group right now for moms with mother hunger, because I feel like it is information for mothers that needs to be presented very gently, because we do have that tendency to be like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna like screw my kids up now. And so I think that those things are really important to provide to our kids. But when I work with adult women, the one thing that I hear over and over and over again is that their parents just like will not take accountability or responsibility for anything, and they will not apologize in any kind of genuine way. And I think that's the missing piece, that if there's a conversation going on and the parent said, I'm really sorry that I did XYZ, or could even receive a criticism and then apologize, it would change everything. And most adult children are very forgiving of their parents if it's like coming from a genuine place. I just think it doesn't happen a whole lot. And I feel like that's one of the things when I work with moms with mother hunger, it's like there's so much guilt. I think because it's like, I really don't want to repeat this cycle, but it's like, we're not going to ever not react to things. Like, I feel like that's just part of being a mom. And like most of us don't have like a ton of support, and we might be solo parenting at various points.
I really like that you frame mother hunger, you or Kelly McDaniels frame it as kind of a third degree wound. Mm-hmm. To me, that makes it more valid. Like, yes, it's okay for you to feel this. You don't need to feel guilt or shame around it. It's a real thing. It also doesn't mean that your mom's a terrible person. That kind of that separation, that third degree is kind of softens the blow, I think, because no one wants to think that about their parent.
Yeah.
So
that's and I feel like what she says about mother hunger in general, I think the thing that's hard and makes it hard for people to recognize it in themselves is a lot of times it's not what happened, but it's what didn't happen. So like if you didn't get certain elements of nurturing, you didn't get certain elements of protection or guidance, you didn't even know it was missing because it's not something that happened. It's like the lack of something that I think can make it really hard to identify.
Callie and I, when we talk about generational wealth in our family, I just think we're really lucky. We just came back from a weekend at my parents', and we just really enjoy spending time with them and so many extended family members too. And we've talked about this pretty in depth. There are two women specifically in our family from two separate generations who very intentionally broke the cycle, who said, this is not feeling good for me. I'm intentionally going to do things differently for my kids. And I think they are so pivotal in creating this generational wealth for us. We talk about it a lot with gratitude. So for moms who might be experiencing maternal or mother hunger, what are some ways? I mean, you mentioned how they could identify that they might have it, but then what are some first steps in trying to break that pattern?
I think probably the first thing is just because you have that and you're trying to break the cycle, just like having a lot of grace for yourself, because you don't have, like, it sounds like you all maybe in like the family you come from have some real wisdom or like health to pull from, I guess you could say. But like if you have a woman who has mother hunger and she was never held as a baby, it's going to be very difficult because it's going to be triggering to have a crying baby and to not have also somebody that can offer some helpful guidance. So being told like, oh, just like leave the baby. Like, I mean, that's like a huge one that I think is just common in our culture is like, don't hold them too much or like you'll spoil them and stuff like that.
I can't believe that's still around.
Oh, I was told that with my first. You're going to spoil him. You're going to spoil him.
That's insane to me.
Yes. I think that just knowing that like there's so much that you're doing for your child. Also, like I just tell people, there's no way that you're going to break every generational cycle. Like you're going to pass some things on. Your kids will probably have to like work on some things or like be self-aware and, do those things. But just like, cause I find that with mother hunger, people just put so much pressure on themselves to like make sure they don't repeat any kind of thing that their mom did and be very, very different.
Yes.
I mean, I had an amazing mom and I went right there. Like, oh gosh.
When I bring up our family, we all got problems. Like no one's perfect. So I'm not saying that by any means. I just bring it up to say like, hey, we can see how powerful it is if you make this choice for yourself and for your child.
The two women that you mentioned who like made like some really conscious choices to like break patterns, I think like that is encouraging for people to hear that you all can notice that in your family, because if it's a mom who is trying to break that cycle, like she could be that woman in her family that
your kids will know.
Yes, right. Yeah.
They'll come into adulthood and you'll be able to talk about it with them and they will say, wow, that took such courage. I mean, it also empowers, I think, the next generation to make those same choices. Maybe they're smaller.
Yeah.
I'm just a really different woman than my mother is, which is hard for me sometimes because she is a phenomenal mother. So I know there are certain things I'm just not going to mother the way she does because it's impossible.
Yeah.
But there's this power to, you know, choose, like make that choice. It's a possibility.
Yes.
It's not, well, how was I raised? You know, there's encouragement to take your own path, choose your own path.
Yeah,
just powerful.
Absolutely. So I think like definitely starting with like just being gentle with yourself is the best thing to start with. And then also just like identifying like how things affected you and what you might want to change. For some people, they might need to do like trauma therapy.
So you're back from all these travels. You've done this like unofficial research of raising kids and being in a supportive environment. And so you have a lot of resources on your Instagram and your website. One of them is labor, right? Like the very start of your matrescence. Can you start there and talk about like the wisdom you've learned about that? And then hopefully we can also get into tools that you hope that we can develop as a culture to become more like these blue zones or these places where mothers and babies are valued and loved.
Well, and when I say pain-free, I think birth is intense. Like, I don't think that there's any way around that. I am also trained in hypnosis, so I think there's also a piece there with being able to have a birth that's free of pain. My first birth was like, I mean, I had an epidural in my first birth. And so I actually did the Hypno Babies program before my first birth. And I think like I had in my head that I could have a birth that, or maybe what I was hoping for was that I could like have a birth that I didn't feel anything, which that, as far as I know, is not possible. Like, I don't think
Thank you for
can
saying
just
that.
feel nothing. No. But I also went into that birth afraid. I don't know if you all felt this way, but I always grew up hearing that birth is very painful. It's maybe the worst pain you'll feel in your life. I was scared of having a baby, and definitely like I was like, you mean like that thing has to like come through like my
100%.
vagina? Like what,
Yeah.
how is that
Gonna rip me in half.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And then you hear like, I don't know, I feel like it's like a cultural thing. We all like share our horror stories about birth too. And so like a lot of times if you haven't had a baby, you've already heard some horror stories about tearing, ripping, like, you know, all those things.
Sometimes it can get competitive.
Yeah.
Like,
it can.
Are you kidding me? Why? Stop.
It really does. I just think about those stories and like my whole body kind of like tenses and tightens. And that is part of what I teach in my course is the fear, tension, pain cycle. So when we are afraid of something, our bodies tense, which then contributes to pain. So that's like a big piece that I try to get people to stay out of. And I have people just examine their belief systems about birth. Like, what do you currently believe about birth? And does that support having a peaceful birth? Or would you like to change that belief system? I mean, I grew up being told I just have kind of a small frame. And so I was always told by lots of family members, like, you're not going to be able to deliver a baby vaginally. Like, you're going to have C-sections.
Whoa.
And I have an aunt who is built very, very tiny, and she had 2 C-sections. So, I mean, even my first OB appointment, when I was pregnant, I was like, do you think I can have a baby? And she was like, yes, you can have a baby. And I ended up with an induction. I don't think it was needed, but again, I was not very in touch with my intuition. So I just kind of went along with that plan. But I feel like that miscarriage kind of like gave me this experience of like, oh, everybody told me that it was going to be the most painful thing. And I didn't feel any pain. I felt like cramping, but not like I wouldn't call it pain. I'll say this, I get really painful periods and it was not as bad as that. And same with my birth of my daughter. I did have a home birth, which I do think there is something to like being in your own home, feeling very safe. I do talk in my course about how like I do think whether you're in the hospital, a birth center, at home, or somewhere else, like you need to feel safe to have a peaceful birth, potentially free of pain. And I had just done a lot of visualizations of a peaceful birth experience. I did a lot of hypnosis around like numbing your body. So that's like a part of it too. And then I really did not like I could feel that I was having contractions, but they like really were not painful at all. I just like laid myself over, you know, those exercise balls every time I had a contraction that came, and just like melted my body in the like as relaxed a position as I could. And I did that for like almost every contraction, and I didn't even really know if I was in labor. And I did have this moment, like as I transitioned, where I was like, so the sensation changed, got more intense. And it was like so interesting because I had this like part of me that felt like this like older, wiser self that was kind of like, all right, get it together. Like the baby is coming. You can do this. Your body is built for this. Like you got this. And so I just kind of like refocus myself. I think what happened is I like came out of trance, which is part of hypnosis. And so I started like having this moment of panic. And then I like went back into trance. And then I feel like 20 minutes later, her head was out. But I feel like the funniest part of that story is, you know, they talk about the ring of fire.
Yes.
I always am like, why do we call it that? Like, it's so descriptive. And I've always like cringed just hearing it. And so when I would talk about it, my husband sings. And so he'd always sing that song, The Burning Ring of Fire. And so literally like, I'm like, oh, that's happening right now. And I just hear that song in my head, in my husband's voice. And it actually really helped because I was like, you know, there's something to like laughing while you're in labor. And so I was like laughing to myself about this. And then I was like, oh, it's over because her head came out and then the rest of her body slipped on out. But I was just like, wait, that's it? Is that
you know
really
what I was thinking about when I had the Ring of Fire? I was thinking about the fires of Mordor in Lord of the Rings.
That's hilarious.
Which was not funny in the moment. I didn't
know.
It was unmedicated, but not peaceful.
So okay.
This is just wild because you're talking about like, oh, this is not very comfortable. I don't think I like this. Like, are you kidding me? That was what your transition was? Oh my gosh. Okay, so you trained yourself in hypnosis. That seems to be a really big piece of this.
So I'm trained as a therapist in hypnosis, but then I kind of created my own scripts for my birth. And so a lot of it was just, so for Ring of Fire, for example, I was like, I'm going to imagine icy hot instead of the Ring of Fire. And that was more helpful for me.
Let's talk about the gap in care for women during the prenatal period. We can start there. Definitely want to get into the postpartum period.
I'm definitely working a lot on just the mindset, like what are you afraid of with new motherhood, but also what are you afraid of with just like having your baby and going into labor and that sort of thing. I think actually mother hunger can show up for a lot of people while they're pregnant. Oof. And what I often see is just people feeling like, kind of like I did, very anxious and sort of like, okay, I know what I don't want to do, but I don't know what to do. Also trying to prepare people for what they might encounter if they're having a hospital birth, because I know I felt very unprepared for that. I was like, oh, I'll have my birth plan and we'll just follow that and it'll go that way. So I'm trying to help people with that. Also, I really love helping people to know what to expect around sleep before they have the baby.
Is there any way we can do that? I think if you would have told me, I would have been terrified.
Yes. Well, I think so many people think like, oh, I'll just like have the baby and maybe I'll like not sleep quite as much And I don't know if either of you had a baby like this, but my first baby would not sleep. And so there was like a lot needed to support him. And I was not prepared for that, which I think has a lot to do with temperament. But I like to let people know that if your baby is not sleeping, you're not doing something wrong. Like some babies are just this way. And so we have to do a lot to like take care of ourselves if that is the case.
On that vein, like tips for taking care of yourself when your baby won't sleep. Like, I don't know, 3 to 5 things. What would you suggest?
Yeah. My biggest tip, honestly, is like this does get harder, I think, if people are working full time. But a big thing I would say is like if you can go to sleep when the baby goes to sleep, especially like in the early days when you're waking up a bunch to nurse and that sort of thing. If it's your first baby, nap when the baby naps. And if you need to like let the dishes be dirty or the laundry go undone, just like let go of some of those things. I do encourage people, and I think it's hard to do this when you're tired, but trying to get out in the morning sun, and this is also very hard in the winter, but in the morning sun within 15 minutes of waking up, because it helps them to start to like sync their circadian rhythms. And if you can be out there for 20 minutes, that's great. And making sure you're eating foods that are nourishing to your body and making sure you like drink enough water and have fluids and that sort of thing. It's like so important to take care of your body when you're not getting enough sleep.
If you have a village, these are the things that would be great for them to show up and do for you. Your dishes.
Absolutely.
Making sure that they know what you need to be nourished and making that food appear for you when you're trying to, you know, maybe your baby's screaming during the hours of noon to 2 when you are trying to get them out in the sun. And it's a heroic effort to get out of the house, to be out in the sun, to sync their circadian rhythm. That's your lunch time. And could somebody please just bring you lunch, you know?
Yes.
Or take the baby outside.
Or take the baby for you.
Right. Yes. Yes, absolutely. You know, I feel like people have different feelings about this because some people are like, I don't want to be away from my baby. But sometimes I think if it feels right for you, if somebody can come hold the baby for an hour while you take a nap, like that's great. And I don't know if you all feel this way, but I think it reminds me of the story you were telling of the concrete and oh, we should all be helping him, because I can also see him being like, no, it's okay. Don't help me. And I think we can do that as moms too, is like when people offer, because I feel like it's just like common in our culture to just over function and do things for ourselves. I feel like to accept help is a huge thing too, or ask for it.
All amazing things.
Okay, Natalie, are you ready for a lightning round?
Sure.
Okay. Self-care to you is
making sure that I have like adequate hydration, gentle movement. I'm not like one who's like doing a lot of strenuous working out, but like just walking and eating just nourishing foods. I love cooking.
Those are also tangible. I love it. If you could give one piece of advice to a woman who's grappling with the way that she herself was mothered, what would it be?
Yeah, like just probably the best thing that you can do is be gentle with yourself. And it's like one side or two sides of the same coin. Like be gentle with yourself and just like being willing to like look in the mirror and like take responsibility if there's like something that you need to change.
What's something you're currently unlearning?
I feel like behaviorism.
That seems
I feel like
broad.
It's big. Like I feel like it like is in all aspects of, for so many of us. It's like I think we're like maybe on the 3rd or 4th generation of being parented behaviorally, and so like it's in all of us unless you have like a very non-mainstream upbringing or something. But that's what I'm trying to unlearn.
Okay. I know it's a lightning round, but just give us a general breakdown of what behavioralism is, what that entails.
If anybody wants to do a deep dive on this, just look up John B. Watson and the things that he said about children.
I remember learning about him in school and being like, what?
Yes.
Never
I
heard
did
of this
too,
dude.
but like when I got like some direct quotes from him, like he said some things like only pat your child on the head, like never kiss them or hug them, like some like really extreme things. But like almost all of what we do from at least our parents' generation and back a few generations is influenced by him.
Who
And
is
so
this
most
guy?
of us like have that in our parenting.
He was like tied to Pavlov, right?
Yes. So like his idea was like you could train kids like dogs. And so like a lot
Yeah.
of the like rewards and punishments things that we do just are from that.
Yeah, I remember in college being like, whoa.
Yes. I mean, I catch myself sometimes saying stuff to my son like if you do this, then this, and I'm like, "Oh, there it is."
Yeah. I've sworn I
mean,
never
it's-
will, and I do
yeah.
it.
Wow. Okay. Rabbit hole for Emily to go down later. If every mother had a billboard on her road to healing, what would yours say?
I mean, for me, probably just like keep going.
Really realistic. I like it. If you could make one practice or treatment mandatory for all postpartum healthcare professionals, it would be
Greer Kirschenbaum and Rocio, I don't remember her last name off the top of my head, but they have this new nurture neuroscience practitioner training. I wish like every practitioner could take that.
the most joyful part of your day is
After I have coffee. having just my kids around because they're just so sweet in the morning and they both want to sit on me. I feel like before I have coffee, I'm like, I just need a minute. But like after that,
You too. I'm glad to hear
that. Yes, yeah. So I feel like just like having their little snuggles after that.
so good. Okay, last one. What makes you feel beautiful?
I think like I don't know if this is like a strange answer to this question, but motherhood. Like I just feel like motherhood has made me feel more feminine and like I've slowed down a lot. I was always like going all the time. And so I feel like when I'm actually able to be slow and purposeful in my day, that.
I'm going to sit with that because that's what I struggle with right now.
I struggle with it
beautiful.
too. Yes.
Yeah, I think everyone struggles the whole time.
Yeah.
But that makes Natalie feel beautiful. I love that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This has
I
been
want to keep
so
talking
fun.
about traveling, but
I know. Well, before you go though, where can our listeners find you?
On Instagram, my handle is Safe Haven Mama, and my website is safehavencnc.com. I was about to give you the wrong. I was about to say the safehavenmama.com. Nope, that was already taken. So.
Well, thank you so much.
This has been fun. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to The Real Mom Hub. Our music is by Naomi O'Leary. You can find us on social at The Real Mom Hub. We're not the authority or even very educated on the medical issues discussed. Do your own research, talk to an expert, make your own decisions, and call us if you learn anything new.
If you like what you hear, follow us on Instagram, or better yet, subscribe to our newsletter. If you don't, that's fine. We can all move on. Our purpose here is community, so if we've resonated with you, tell a friend.
Thanks for listening.